Okay, welcome back. This is the last video of our Azure Site Recovery Deployment series. We have basically at this point replicated VMs to Azure, built a recovery plan, and now we're going to do a test recovery in Azure. So to do that, let's move over to the portal. And in the portal here, I have expanded our EDU vault, and we can see that we have our recovery plan that we built. So I'm going to click on that. And the first thing I want to show here are the different types of recoveries we can do. So I can customize, of course, that's what we did earlier. I can complete a test failover, a planned failover, or an unplanned failover. A test failover is where you would do your typical testing. What this does is it spins up your virtual machines with a -test at the end of their names. It places them in a network of your choice, such as a recovery network or an isolated network. And it doesn't impact your on-premise replication at all. So all of your replication continues as if nothing is happening. The second option here is a planned failover, and a planned failover gives us the opportunity to basically do a lift and shift. So we can take workloads on premise, shift them over to Azure, turn off the workloads on premise, and have basically made a migration to Azure with very, very little downtime at all. Then finally, we have an unplanned failover. An unplanned failover is just as it sounds. This means that we've lost a rack, or we've lost a server of some sort, or we've lost an entire data center, and we want to basically flip over to Azure. And so what this option does for us, if we have enough replication snapshots, is we can actually go back in time and pick something over the last period of time based on our configuration. Again, three options here. We're going to do a test failover in our scenario to do a full test of the environment. So I'm going to click on test failover. This is going to bring up some options. I have very few options when I do a test failover. It's showing that the failover is going to come from VMM to Azure, as we would expect. Now, a planned failover and an unplanned failover lets us do a failback in the opposite direction. So we have a couple of options there. For a recovery point with a test, we have just a few choices here. We can pick the least loss of data with the latest recovery point objective. We can use the least amount of time by using the recovery time objective. This means it uses data that's already fully processed. And then we can do the latest app consistent version. So as we saw in an earlier video, that we have regular snapshots and app consistent snapshots. I'm going to choose the lowest recovery point objective. And then we get to select the network. Now this would list all the networks that are compatible with these virtual machines. I'm in South Central Texas. These virtual networks are in South Central Texas now. And the great thing is I get to choose whatever I want. I'm going to choose my recovery network, which is mapped, and that one is isolated and not routing back to on-premise. Now what this is giving me is warnings about network connectivity, just sort of making sure you're aware that you could put these in a network that would impact your production workloads. My recovery network is isolated as mentioned. Now if I had chose this Azure infrastructure, that one actually is on a VNet that is routed back to my on-premise location, so I won't choose that in this case. I would choose that, however, if I wanted to bring it back a workload and actually have it working in my environment. So I'm going to click OK here. This is going to kick off the test failover, and what we're going to see here is a status change. You can ignore this test failover completed. That was from a previous test I did. But now we have test failover in progress, and that is an active link that I can click on. And this is basically laying out the steps of the recovery plan, including the steps that we reviewed in the last video. So I can see I have a recovery plan failover set of steps, which basically is prepping these virtual machines to bring them online. We're basically attaching storage and getting them ready for compute. Then we can start our group 1 virtual machines, which is our DCO2, our domain controller, complete our post step here, and then start our group 2, which is our other workload. Now, this process here takes the longest amount of time. It'll probably take about 15 minutes, 10 minutes or so. So we're going to pause and come back and can pick this up. Okay, so we are back now. You can see that it took about 10 minutes for our job to complete to actually prepare our virtual machines to turn on. And we've moved on here to start DC02 in our group 1 start. And now the recovery plan is asking for some input here. So if I open this up, you can see that manual input or user input is required. So I'm going to click the ellipses here and say complete manual action. Basically, this is going to provide the instructions that we created earlier, and I'm just going to say that we had successful replication. Click on the option to complete, and then click OK. What this is going to do is it's going to resume the recovery plan, and it's going to move on to starting group 2. Now the starting is going to be quick, and you can see here that it's already moved on past the manual step. Starting group 2 is going to complete here. Let's take another break and come back in just a few minutes. Okay, so while that recovery is completing, let's go to our recovery testing resource group, which is where we know that everything is being stood up because we chose those options for each virtual machine. You can see here that the virtual machines are showing up, and it looks like if we click on one of them, let's click on our ABS test server. This is the one that we just a moment ago told the recovery plan to continue. And within just a minute, you see it's already up and running. So I basically paused for 30 seconds. So this is up and running. We can see that it has a network interface assigned to it. These all have -test at the end, so you know that they are part of a recovery test. You can also see that each virtual machine is going to provide just the standard details of what it has. The other thing I want to mention quickly is because these virtual machines are being brought up in a recovery network that has no connectivity to it from on-premise, it's going to be kind of hard to test unless I do something to get access to that network. So there's a couple of things you could do for this. The first one is you could create a point-to-site VPN into your recovery network so that any computer device could tunnel in through a VPN connection. Just like any other VPN that you would create, you would install some software that Azure provides for the site point-to-site VPN and then just connect to it. The other option is to add a public IP address onto one of your virtual machines, exposing it to the internet and allowing you to RDP to the server. So this server, you can see the connect button is grayed out. That's because it doesn't have a public IP address. If it did have a public IP address, this would light up. I could connect to the server through RDP, and then once I'm there, it's like a jump box. I can get to all my other servers. So if you're doing a true recovery testing environment, you might want to have a couple of boxes that become jump boxes like that for you to test. Make sure everything's running. So that's it for reviewing what was brought online. The last step we have here is taking a look at completing the recovery testing. So I'm going to go back to my vault. And I'm going to click on my recovery plan. And basically, I'm going to complete the test. So let's get this back up and running here. Click on our recovery plans. And it looks like it's waiting for input again. So what we're in a state where this test environment is going to stay up until we complete the test. So at this point, you would begin testing. You would leave the portal alone until you're done. You know what you need to fix for the next run, or you're just satisfied that everything's working as planned, and you complete test. When you complete the test, you just give some notes. Recovery testing was successful. Click on testing is complete and click OK. At this point, it's basically going to create a job to tear down the whole environment. And it will empty out the resource group of all the test machines and network interfaces so everything's cleaned up. So that completes this series. I hope this was helpful for you, and we'll see you in another series coming soon. Thank you.